Hello and welcome to today's class. Today's a bit of an interesting, different style of a Ask the Rabbi class, so you'll see in a moment what I'm talking about. If you would like to sponsor today's class or a future class, please reach out and we will arrange that and make it happen. Sponsorship opportunities are definitely available. I also wanted to put a plug in for our upcoming Purim festivities. Purim is coming up on Monday, March 2nd and March 3rd. It starts March 2nd, Monday at night, and it ends the following day at the evening. Purim night, March 2nd, we are having our annual wine and cheese event with a Megillah Esther, a Scroll of Esther reading. As we do every year, this is a highlight for many, many people, and it's very enjoyable. It's a nice party, and it's for only adults. And the following day, we are having our annual Grand Purim celebration for the community, which the theme this year is going to be that it's a tiny Purim. Everything is going to be miniature and shrunken down. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We're going to hear the Megillah, the Scroll of Esther. We're going to share gifts of food with each other as the mitzvahs of Purim go. Okay, so the nature of today's class is not really technically answering a question. It's more responding to a follow-up that I received, which was a follow-up to a question that we addressed in a previous class. So, what was the class? The question in a previous class, I don't know if it was the third or fourth one, the question was, what is the dividing line between Orthodox and Ultra-orthodox? Okay? We addressed this question at length. In one small nutshell, it was that there are truly no dividing factors. The Jewish people are one people, one body, so to speak, one soul, one entity. And these names, Orthodox, Ultra-orthodox, Modern Orthodox, they're just labels. They don't actually identify our true reality. So, the person who had submitted that question saw the recording of the class on YouTube, and responded to me, wrote me an email, a very, very, very nice, well-written email. I really appreciated it, and if you're listening, know that I thank you very much for your email. Very pleasant email, kind of not disagreeing or anything with what I said. He said he learned a lot, he appreciated it. He said that I kind of missed the point of his question. That's not really what he was asking, and I appreciate the correction. His question was more of a mundane kind of question. I have the email in front of me. I'm not going to read it, but it was a more of a mundane kind of question, more of a practical kind of question, more than a philosophical or ideological question. What he was asking was, if somebody is considered ultra-orthodox, or if they're considered orthodox, or if they're considered any of the other terms, whatever categories, if they were to show up at somebody's house, like, what kind of food can they be served, or what kind of food can they not be served, and things like that. More just like practical, how to categorize different types of Jews, to know how to relate to them best, which is actually a beautiful thing, to want to meet people where they're at, and that's very, very nice. So I'm taking a few minutes today to respond to this email. Instead of responding to the email by actually writing back an email, I'm going to use it through the medium of this platform over here. Okay. I am a representative of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I am a rabbi. I tried to do my best to be a Torah true Jew. So I tried my best to convey Torah's emes, the Torah of truth. So that is where my perspective is coming from. The idea of putting Jews into different categories to fit into a nice, neat little box, I feel very uncomfortable with. The idea doesn't sit well with me. Society and the media very much love labeling Jews, very, very much. And doing so is usually not a cause for unity or peace. Rather, the opposite. It's a cause for strife and disagreements and hatred, God forbid. So I want to reiterate what we said in the last class, that I'm going to say it again, that Jews are one people, we're one unit, we're one soul. External, superficial differences are not what defines us. So, if you're listening, as frustrating as this may be, I can't really answer the question you asked. And just to use the example that you gave, to serve food to one type of Jew versus another type of Jew, this Jew can eat this one, this Jew can't eat that one. You can't serve non-kosher food to a Jew. A Jew should eat kosher. Okay, if a person themselves are not holding in a place where they're eating kosher, okay, that's your own personal relationship with God. But to serve another Jew kosher, non-kosher is I can't wrap my head around the idea, so I can't really respond to it, unfortunately. But this email that you sent did bring up a very, very interesting point, because the reality is on the table there are distinctions. There are distinctions amongst Jews, but as we will see, these are not distinctions which distant us from one another. So it's actually a very unique thing. Let's get into this. Let's go through some of the differences that exist among Jews. First example that came to mind was there's the idea that there are Kohanim, there's the Kohen, there's the Levi, or in English the Levite, and Yisrael, the Israelite. Three categories of Jewish people, three types of Jews. The Kohen was the type of Jew, it was a familial thing, passed from parent to child, that the Kohen would serve in the temple in Jerusalem. No other Jew, a regular Israelite, was not allowed to serve in the temple. It was restricted and designated for the Kohanim, which is Kohen is plural for Kohen. The Levi, or the Levite, also served in the temple. At kind of the way I understand is kind of an assistance to the Kohanim. They played instruments and sang different things as part of the temple services. And the Yisrael, the Israelite, is basically every other Jew. So there are these distinctions. Okay, let's go through another distinction. Converts. A non-Jewish person who was born non-Jewish, it means their mother is not Jewish, therefore they're not Jewish. Who down the road they discover that this Judaism thing is very interesting, to the extent that they pushed and they got in touch with the right people, and after their long journey they went through a conversion process according to Jewish law, according to the code of Jewish law, and they have become Jewish. So, such a person is a full-fledged Jew. Again, assuming they did it correctly, aligned with Jewish law. They are a full-fledged Jew, and there's no difference between them and any other Jew on the street. There is one distinction. It's not going to be what you expect, which is that the Torah prescribes that a convert must be treated with more love and more care than your average Jew. Every Jew must be treated with love and care, but a convert must be treated with even more care and sensitivity than your regular Jew. Number 3, children. The difference between child and adult in Jewish life is very, very big. The main difference is that an adult, meaning over the age of 13 for a boy, we call that bar mitzvah, or 12 for a girl, we call that bas mitzvah or bat mitzvah. A Jew over that age is obligated in all of Torah and mitzvahs. They are required to keep the laws of the Torah to the fullest degree. A child below that age is not obligated to keep Torah law. Okay? I'm talking ideologically, not practically, because practically there is an obligation on the parents to educate and to train their children to keep Torah and mitzvahs, and keep the laws of the Torah, slowly training them into it. As they get older and older, they do more and more with more care. By the time they become bar or bat mitzvah, they are already familiar with this very much. They've grown up with it, and it's not a foreign concept to them when they reach that age. So that is another somewhat of a distinction. Now let's focus on the very biggest distinction that exists in the Jewish world today, and has existed for the past around 1,000 years, which is the difference between Ashkenazic Jewry and Sephardic Jewry, Ashkenazim and Sephardim. So, I want to point out that the person who had asked me this question originally is an anthropologist, so they would do a better job of explaining the history than I would, and I might botch it up, but just the basic, my understanding. So forgive me if I make a couple of mistakes with the history. Up until around 1,000 years ago, there was no such thing as Sephardic Jews and Ashkenazic Jews. It was just Jews. At a certain point, we were exiled from our land, from the land of Israel, and we were spread out throughout the different places in the world. The Jews were already living in Spain. So Sephardim, the word Sephardim comes from the word Sepharad. Sepharad is Spain in Hebrew. That's where the name Sephardim comes from. Because many of these Jews, they have already started living in Spain for many centuries prior. There's even a possibility that even shortly after the time of King Solomon, there were Jews in Spain already. And Spanish Jewry flourished, and many great Torah scholars came out of Spain and the Sephardic Jewry. Namely, there's famous ones: the Rambam, Maimonides, the Ramban, Nachmanides, Abarbanel, and others. The Rif. And then there's also on the other side, you have the Ashkenazic Jewry, which is more of Eastern European, when the Jews ended up there. Now, the differences that developed in these two sides of the Jewish world were very, very unique and very, very different from one another in many areas, as we'll go through soon. Differences in language and food and culture, and a big one which we'll get to. At the same time, we're all one and the same people. It's not two different Judaisms. It's not two different Jews. It's all one Jewish people. The same Torah, the same God. Now, let's go through some of the common differences that exist between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews. Just a couple of simple examples. One, language, the way we talk. So I think all Sephardic Jews take the word Shabbos. Shabbos, the seventh day of the week, the day of rest. It's a holy day. We're commanded to rest on Shabbos. So, Ashkenazi Jew, like myself, will pronounce it Shabbos. Shabbos. A Sephardic Jew will pronounce it Shabbat. Okay? Shabbat. It sounds kind of different. However, we both spell it the same way. Shin, Beis, Taf. It's the same letters. We just pronounce it and say it differently. And more importantly, we actually keep the laws of Shabbat identically. Number two, common Jewish foods that even some non-Jewish people know about. There's like gefilte fish, square matzah that they find in the stores, chicken soup, matzo ball soup. So many, maybe even all of these quote-unquote Jewish foods are actually Ashkenazi foods. Sephardim have very different kinds of foods, more spicy, if I understand correctly. Again, I'm not Sephardi, but this is my understanding, and I've eaten Sephardic food before. Not just in pronunciation, but also in language itself. Ashkenazi Jews mainly spoke, and many still do today, speak Yiddish. Okay, it used to be that was the language that was spoken. Now and then it became primarily Yiddish. Now it's also Yiddish, and sometimes somewhat Yiddish. And Sephardic Jews, they spoke Ladino, Portuguese, and Arabic. Another difference, just an example, is the Torah scroll. The Torah is read in the shul, in the synagogue, 3 times a week when there's a minyan, when there's 10 Jews in the room. On Mondays, Thursdays, and on Shabbos. Mondays and Thursdays, just the beginning of the Torah portion of the week is read, and on Shabbos, the entire portion is read from a Torah scroll. So the Torah scroll, as it is in Ashkenazi shuls, It's a scroll written on parchment and ink, and it's wrapped in a cover, usually made of velvet or something similar, and it's kind of pulled off from the top. Sometimes there's a crown on top of that. You take the crown off, then the cover, and then you put the Torah scroll onto the platform that was called the bima. It's opened up, it's unrolled, and it's read on those days. So Sephardim do the same thing. They read the Torah 3 times a week. The differences regarding the scroll itself is that it's not wrapped up in a felt cover or anything like that. It's in a wooden cylindrical, is that a real word? I don't know. Box, which basically stands. It's not laid down onto the bima. It stands up on its bottom, and it's opened up while standing, and it's read like that. If you get to see pictures of it or see it in action, it's actually quite fascinating. I'm sure for the Sephardim it's not so fascinating. It's it's treated with reverence and holiness and sanctity, but they probably see it as normal. But for us Ashkenazim, it's pretty cool to watch. Now, regarding Torah law, practice of the Torah. Seemingly, we find a very stark difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. In fact, if we were to pinpoint the main difference that exists between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, past language, past culture, past pronunciations, past food, past all those externalities, if we could pinpoint the key difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, it would be this: halacha. Halacha means Jewish law. Huge differences. Hold your breath for a minute. We'll explain this in a moment. I want to give 2 examples. There's many examples, but I want to give 2 examples of differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim when it comes to following Jewish law. One example is kitnius or kitniot. Kitnius refers to legumes, however you pronounce it in English. These are things like corn and I don't want to start making things up and sound foolish. I don't know what the hell many of the kitnias are. The most famous one, of course, is rice. Okay, well, what does this take place in Jewish life? So on Pesach, on Passover, it is forbidden for a Jew to eat or own chametz, which is any leavened product, any leavened bread type product. So that refers to bread, pasta, cookies, cakes, anything like that. On Passover, for the 8 days of Passover, this is absolutely forbidden to own or to eat. So the Ashkenazi Jewry accepted a stringency upon themselves. It was decreed and put into Jewish law, not to treat the same, more or less treat the same way these products. We don't have it in the home, we don't own it, we don't eat it. We give the same treatment to kitnios. Let's use rice as the example. You will not walk into an Ashkenazi home and find rice in the home on Passover. It's not going to be there. There's no rice. There's not a grain of rice. Don't say the word rice on Passover there. If you go into a Sephardic home, they have rice aplenty. Rice is a staple food, and I'm sure they have plenty of it on Passover, because Sephardic Jewry never it was never enacted into law, and it was never accepted by Sephardic Jewry as something that they do. Most Sephardim. Okay, that's one core difference. Another core difference, an example that I found, interesting example I found. This is found in the Code of Jewish Law, section of Orach Chaim, chapter 451, law number 26, if you want to look it up. So this is actually also in the laws of Passover. It's regarding koshering, or kashering. So besides for kosher foods and non-kosher foods, which we've spoken about in the past a number of times, if you have a pot, and you cook somebody cooks something not kosher in that pot. Take a piece of horse meat or something, put it in the pot, they cook it on the fire. That pot is now treated as not kosher pot. Okay? You cannot take this pot and now, cook, oatmeal in it. Okay? it's very likely, depending on the circumstances, that oatmeal is now not kosher. But definitely you can't cook the oatmeal in the first place. The pot is not kosher. You can't use the pot. Why? Because the taste of the horse meat was absorbed into the walls of the pot, and now this pot, in order to use it, has to go through a koshering process, or it has to be kashered. That's the word that's used. And depending on what the utensil is and how it was used, there's two methods of koshering in general. There is, first of all, cleaning it, making sure that's totally clean on the outside, on the surface. Once it's clean, the utensil is then immersed in boiling, bubbling, hot water. It's dunked in for a moment or two, and it comes out, and then it's rinsed, and the pot, or whatever it is, the utensil, is now kosher. It doesn't work for every utensil. You have to ask your rabbi what to do this with, and when to do it, and how to do it. It's not so straightforward and simple. The other way of koshering is through fire. Some things need to be kosher through fire. It has to be heated to a very high temperature. Not just hot is good enough. It has to be a certain degree of heat. To the extent that it basically... so let me go back a second. Sorry. Dipping it into the boiling water, basically what it does is there's a rule in Jewish law that keboile kach pelta, which means the way that the utensil absorbs the flavor, that's how it exudes the flavor. Exude? That's right, did I use that correctly? It spits out the flavor. So if it comes in through hot water, through heat of liquid, it comes out the same way. And when it dips the utensil into the hot water, the bubbling water, it pulls out that taste. And now the pot is kosher. But the things that need to go through fire, the fire burns the taste out of it. Okay, and then the utensil is kosher. Now, this is referring to metal. Metal. Things that are made of ceramic or earthenware, says in halacha and Jewish law, those things actually cannot be kosher. They cannot be made kosher. There's another category of material which becomes a very big discussion. This is what it says in this chapter of the Code of Jewish Law, which is glass. Glass is a funny thing. Glass is very strange. In general, glass is very interesting. If you just examine glass and look at glass and think about glass, it's a very interesting material. There's a big disagreement regarding the koshering of glass. Ashkenazic Jewry, in general, I'm saying in general for a reason, I'm not going to get into why I'm saying in general for right now, but Ashkenazic Jewry in general, we cannot kasher or make kosher a utensil that is made of glass. Water doesn't help, fire doesn't help, well, fire probably break it. It's not something that we generally can do. Sephardic Jewry, on the other hand, follows a very different opinion in regards to this, which is that it's not really that you can kosher glass, rather there's no need to kosher glass in the first place, because glass doesn't absorb any flavor. Fascinating. A huge difference of opinion. Whether glass absorbs flavor or it doesn't, then there's a big difference in practically what to do, whether you could kosher it or you don't need to kosher it. Why? Where does this stem from? The Code of Jewish Law. The Code of Jewish Law is the final say on all the discussions of the Talmud and all the discussions of the commentaries and the early commentators and the later commentators and clarifiers and explainers of these discussions. The Code of Jewish Law solidifies it and says this is practically what we do. The Code of Jewish Law, written by Rabbi Yosef Cairo, is the practical guide for Jewish life. It's taking all the discussions, all the back and forth, all the deep analysis of the Talmud and putting it into practical, in your face, this is what you're supposed to do. Whether it's waking up in the morning, whether it's saying blessings, whether it's keeping kosher, whether it's koshering things, whether it's keeping Shabbat or Shabbos, or holidays, and all the things related to that, all of Jewish life is all written clearly in the Code of Jewish Law, in the Shulchan Aruch. The author of the Code of Jewish Law, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who I just mentioned, was a Sephardi. The Sephardic Jewry follows the rulings of Rabbi Yosef Cairo, of the author of the Code of Jewish Law. Rabbi Moshe Isserlis is the author of what's known as the glosses of the Code of Jewish Law, or it's known as the tablecloth, the Shulchan Aruch in Hebrew. The Code of Jewish Law is called the Shulchan Aruch, the set table. That's what it's called. The Ramosha Isserles, his commentary on this Code of Jewish Law is known as the Mappa, the tablecloth for the table. And he adds things sometimes. He disagrees very often with Rabbi Yosef Karo, and he follows a different opinion in the based on the early sages. And very often, very, very often, there's differences of opinion from right to left on how to proceed as a Jew, how to act in this situation or that situation. Ashkenazic Jewry follows the rulings of Rav Moshe Isserles, known as his acronym as the Ramah. There's a very, very, very crucial point here. Okay, so what did we just see? There are major differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. And we said earlier, there's also a difference between Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. But regarding this, there's huge differences between Ashkenazim and Sephardim. You know, sometimes if Ashkenazi can walk into a Sephardi's house, and he doesn't necessarily know what to do with himself. That's not exactly true, and I'll tell you why in a second. The important, crucial point here is that with all these major differences, each quote-unquote side treats the other quote-unquote side with the same reverence, with the same sanctity, because it's the same Torah. Ashkenazim and Sephardim follow two diverging opinions very often in Jewish law, but each one is legitimate. In other words, I as an Ashkenazi do not look down at Sephardim and say, you guys are doing it wrong. And Sephardim don't look at Ashkenazim and say, oh, you guys are doing it wrong. No. I as an Ashkenazi, I look at a Sephardi and I say, you are following exactly what you're supposed to do. You're following God's law. And they look at us the same way. Because it's the same Torah. It's two dimensions of the same Torah, but it's the same Torah, and both are necessary. It's to say, in other words, it's not two coins. It's two sides of the same coin. Just another example or two. It's like a body, right? A body, if the entire body was a head, it wouldn't be a functioning body. If the entire body was the function of a hand, every part of it was a hand, it wouldn't be a functioning body either. The reason what makes the body function properly is that you have many different body parts, and they all have different functions. There's the nose that smells, there's the eyes that see, there's the mouth that eats, that breathes, that tastes. Nose does this breathing as well. The hair that has one function, the ears have another function, the heart, the mind, the brain, the organs, the liver, you name it. Whatever it is, each one has a unique function. And they all operate together as a unified whole to produce what's known as a human body. And they each must have their own different functions in order for the human being to operate and to live properly. So those differences aren't a bad thing. They need to be different. That's how we are able to live. And also, it's like a diamond. You have a diamond that, when light reflects on the diamond, it can start reflecting or refracting different colors: red, green, blue. I'm not a scientist, but I just it reflects different shades and colors. But it's all the same diamond. So too, when it comes to Ashkenazim and Sephardim and these kind of differences, it's the same Torah, it's the same Judaism, it's the same people. It's two sides of the same coin. I hope this was informative. I hope it touched somebody and it uplifted somebody. It gave somebody a different perspective on things, a positive perspective. And this Torah study that we had today should be the tipping scale that brings the Geula, the redemption of the world and the Jewish people specifically, when true peace will reign in the entire world and with each and every Jew, with each other. I want to wish everyone who's listening and everyone who's here a happy Purim. And if you're able to make it, it would be fantastic. We'd love to see you there. If you'd like to submit a question for a future class, you can submit all your kind of questions that you always had, and maybe you've accepted as reality, but maybe it's not, so you should start questioning it. In regard to things that are Jewish, you can go to jewisherie.com/ask, ASK. Have a great day, and a Freilichen Purim, a happy Purim.